Sometime between 11:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. on April 13, 2024, 36-year-old Brittany Moeser left a handwritten note in her home in Washington County, Illinois, saying she was going for a walk, but after leaving, she was never seen again. While her disappearance was initially connected to her struggles with mental health, the discovery of a missing firearm and her scent that dogs had tracked to the nearby road suggested something way more ominous. Brittany was born on October 14, 1987, and at the time of her disappearance, she was living with her parents in the rural community of Claremont, Illinois. She'd recently moved back home from Chicago after her mental health issues worsened, causing her to become addicted to alcohol. By the summer of 2023, Brittany had reached her breaking point and decided to quit drinking. So she moved back in with her mother, Deborah, and stepfather, Ron, to be closer to her family. She also sought professional help for her mental issues and began volunteering at a local food shelter. Once she was settled in, she spent a lot of time writing in her journals and covering her living space with reminders of motivation and love. On the day she disappeared, on April 13, 2024, Brittany was home alone, as Ron had left at approximately 11:30 a.m. to attend his grandson's baseball game, and her mother, Deborah, was out running errands. When Deborah returned home, she found Brittany's handwritten note explaining that she had taken the family dog, Romeo, for a walk. That evening, Romeo showed back up safely at the house, but still, Brittany was nowhere to be found. The following day, they reported her missing to the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Over the next few days, investigators would learn that a handgun and Brittany's journals were missing from the home. Neither has ever been recovered. Over the next 3 weeks, as searchers were combing through over 500 acres, they discovered Brittany's down coat in a clearing with a camper on it near her home. Also found nearby was her backpack that contained the same candy wrappers that were found in her coat. Canine units had tracked Brittany's scent to a road leading to Tilden, where the trail abruptly ended. Because of this, investigators theorized she may have been picked up by someone in a vehicle. Unfortunately, with no leads to go on, the case eventually stalled, but was given a fresh set of eyes in July of 2025. A specialized team of investigators from roughly 24 Metro East agencies arrived in Washington County and interviewed approximately 40 individuals, including 2 who were in jail at the time, but once again, nothing led them to Brittany's whereabouts. In February of 2026, the reward money for information increased to $20,000, but it still hasn't generated a break in the case. When Brittany Moeser disappeared, she was described as standing approximately 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighing around 130 pounds with red hair. If you or anyone you know has information about Brittany's whereabouts, please call the Washington County Sheriff's Office at 618-327-4800, extension 105, or submit a tip anonymously through their tip line. Brittany disappeared on April 13, 2024, and as of April 2026, she remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. At 12:30 p.m. on May 6, 2016, 17-year-old Kianna Galvin left her home on foot to meet friends at the nearby Jim Hansen Park, or at least that's what she told her family. The truth was that she was going to the home of a man named John C. Walker. However, after being spotted entering his home, she was never seen or heard from again. Kianna was born to parents Fiona Galvin and Everett York on July 16, 1998, and had attended South Elgin High School and later Auburn High School in Rockford, Illinois, where her father lived. She eventually dropped out and earned her GED and began planning to attend an art and design school in Atlanta, Georgia, to pursue a career in interior design. Unfortunately, she would never get the chance. While preparing to relocate to Atlanta, she got a job as a housekeeper at the Rehabilitation Center for the Elderly in South Elgin, But a day before she disappeared, on May 5th, she was fired for missing too much work. Even though she had only held the job for a couple of months, her mother, Kianna, noted that she seemed cheerful after the firing that day. They even went shopping together later that evening for steaks to cook for Mother's Day. On the day of her disappearance, on Friday, May 6, 2016, Kianna was once again in a good mood and had a pleasant conversation with her mother as she was leaving for work. She then spent the morning cleaning the house with her younger sister before leaving on foot at 12:30 p.m., never to be seen by her family again. 5 minutes later, she sent Walker a message informing him she was headed to his home on Reverie Road to obtain some marijuana. Not long after that, a neighbor of Walker's spotted Kianna going inside. 30 minutes later, her phone was disconnected from the network, leading investigators to theorize that it hadn't been simply turned off, but that the battery was either removed or the device was destroyed. Fiona arrived home at around 1 p.m. and tried to call Kianna, but it went straight to voicemail. By Mother's Day, May 8th, when there was still no sign of Kianna, Fiona called the South Elgin Police Department and reported her missing. She waited for several reasons. Before going missing, Kianna had been on juvenile probation, which Fiona attributed to a bad argument between them. Before that, she had run away from home on 2 different occasions, once in 2013 and again in 2014. However, this time her disappearance was different. Not only had she left behind her wallet and purse, but also her phone charger, which she typically took with her if she planned to be away for a few days. Unfortunately, because of Kianna's past issues with running away, the police initially classified her case as a runaway, which proved to be a devastating delay. It would then be 5 whole days before investigators would actually speak with Walker. During questioning, he claimed she never even entered his house and left while texting someone else at 12:45 p.m. However, police knew this was a lie because there were no further texts from her phone after her last one to Walker at 12:35 p.m., where she said that she was, and I quote, around the corner. Plus, a neighbor of Walker's had actually seen Kianna enter his home. The following day, on May 12, 2016, the investigation took a grim turn. That same neighbor found traces of blood on his garbage can lid. Lab analysis later revealed it belonged to Kianna. Unfortunately, witnesses reported seeing the responding officer just toss the trash can into his squad car without ever properly securing it. Then, in June 2016, Walker suspiciously remodeled his basement and bathroom. Neighbors watched as new concrete was poured and carpet replaced. But it would still be another 5 months before investigators from the South Elgin Police Department executed a search warrant on his home. During that search, state police brought in cadaver dogs that alerted to the scent of human remains in both the backyard and the recently renovated basement. They removed several items, including a mattress and floorboards, but no further findings were publicly disclosed. 2 years after Kianna's disappearance, Walker was convicted in a separate case for violently assaulting a woman by slashing her throat. A jury found him guilty, and he was subsequently sentenced to a 15-year prison sentence, which he is currently still serving. Even though Kianna remains missing, her case has sparked a movement for change, leading to the creation of the Kianna Alert, a notification system designed to bridge the gap between an Amber Alert and a standard missing persons report. By texting ADD to 312-561-3319, Illinois residents can receive these alerts in real time. Another bill that was passed was the Missing Persons Identification Act, which took effect on January 1, 2026, and forced Illinois police to accept reports of missing persons without waiting periods and forbade them from dismissing cases based on assumptions that the child ran away. When Kianna disappeared, she stood between 5 foot 4 inches and 5 foot 6 inches, and also had a distinctive tattoo on her left wrist, which consisted of a heart, a pulse line, and a cross. If you or anyone you know has information regarding the disappearance of Kianna Galvin, please call the South Elgin Police Department at 232-8400 or the Cook County Sheriff's Office at 773-674-9490. Kianna disappeared on May 6, 2016, and as of April 2026, she remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. Around noon on October 10, 1985, in Decatur, Illinois, Delaney Davison, along with her 3 nephews and her own child, loaded up in her red 1981 Dodge Omni, headed to the nearby Kroger to buy some groceries. However, when they arrived, she found TJ asleep, and instead of waking him, she left him unattended while she and the other 3 children went inside. When Delaney returned, TJ was tragically gone. She quickly reported him missing, and the only clue they had to go on was from an eyewitness who claimed she saw a boy matching TJ's description getting into a black 2-door 1978 or 1979 Oldsmobile Cutlass with Indiana license plates. Sadly, after that, TJ was never seen again, and as the years went by, the case would be filled with fishy details, haunting family coincidences, and leads that reached all the way to Mexico. TJ was born Timothy Jacob Davison on January 22, 1981, and was described as a quiet child who was missing his 2 upper front teeth and had a noticeable speech impediment. In late 1985, he and his siblings relocated from Winter Haven, Florida, to Decatur, Illinois, to live with their aunt because their parents, Drayden Davison and Deborah DeLoach, had divorced and were either unable or unwilling to raise them. Deborah was originally granted custody, but eventually handed her children over to Drayden's sister, Delaney. By the time the kids arrived in Decatur, Delaney had already been granted custody. According to Delaney, her brother Drayden and his wife Deborah had lives of their own and failed to expose the children to basic learning or proper care. TJ didn't even know his last name when he arrived in Illinois. Before she obtained custody, the kids had basically been passed around between relatives. TJ's father, Drayden, was no stranger to the law, and after the disappearance, he was arrested on an unrelated warrant. He then went on to be arrested multiple times for battery and aggravated assault, and was even arrested for the kidnapping and false imprisonment of an adult. Other offenses included burglary, resisting officers, and violating probation. Despite this, he's not considered a suspect in TJ's disappearance. On the day he vanished, on October 10, 1985, Delaney took him and the other 3 children to the Brentwood Village Shopping Center on North Water Street in Decatur to buy some groceries from Kroger. When she arrived and found TJ asleep, she wrapped him in a blanket and then took the other children inside with her. 30 minutes later, when she returned, TJ was gone. After reporting him missing, a massive search got underway involving dogs and helicopters. Meanwhile, investigators, specifically Police Chief Mark Barthelemy, began claiming that elements of Delaney's story were suspicious. For starters, was her claim that she had locked her car door. However, since they found no signs of a break-in, they felt that she was lying, completely ignoring the fact that a 4-year-old could have easily unlocked the door themselves. A 1981 Dodge Omni used standard plunger-style locks that even a small child could pull upward. They also theorized that someone may have had a key to the car and opened it. Unlike today, getting keys made for cars back then was just as easy as getting a house key made. The second suspicious element was the black baseball cap that Delaney claimed he was wearing. However, according to the police chief, it was impossible for a child to keep a hat on while sleeping in a car. He also felt there was no way a child could stay asleep when the car stopped or when everyone climbed out. This led to a different theory that TJ had never been in the car to begin with that day, and the abduction story was presented to cover up the truth of what had really happened. Regardless of their suspicions, the only solid lead was the witness report of a man and woman placing a young boy into a black 2-door 1978 or 1979 Oldsmobile Cutlass with Indiana license plates near the shopping center. Despite the detail, the car was never found. 2 years later, in November 1987, there was renewed hope in the case. A deaf and mute boy was found wandering the streets of Juarez, Mexico, and matched TJ's physical description and even shared a similar speech struggle. For a moment, it seemed like the search was over, but a footprint comparison showed the boy was not actually TJ and instead was Jose Garcia from Tampico, Mexico. That same year, TJ's maternal aunt, Cindy Smith, also disappeared, but from Winter Haven, Florida. While it involved the same families, no evidence was ever found to link the cases. The suspicion surrounding Delaney never ended, and in 2013, they executed a search warrant on her property following a tip provided by someone on their deathbed. The tip claimed that TJ was buried on the property where he once lived on North Charles Street in Decatur, Illinois. By this time, the lot was vacant because the house had burned down in 2002. Despite an extensive dig, no remains were ever found. One of TJ's siblings eventually came forward as an adult and maintained that TJ was indeed kidnapped that day and described Delaney as a fantastic mother. While she had taken a polygraph back during the original investigation, the results have never been released. She also had a boyfriend living with her at the time, but he's never been considered a person of interest. If TJ were still alive today, he would be 45 years old. If you or anyone you know has information regarding the disappearance or whereabouts of Timothy Jacob Davison, please contact the Decatur Police Department at 217-424-2738. TJ Davison disappeared on October 10, 1985, and as of April 2026, he remains missing, and this case remains unsolved.